Can be used to tie two ropes together, or in the setting of using a prusik line, it's how I would then create a loop in my prusik. So let's have a look at it first time round with a rope. Then I'll grab one of my prusiks, untie that, and we'll just create a prusik loop with those lines of rope as well. So I'm taking my two lines of rope and passing them in opposing directions. I need to make sure that I've got enough line here that my tails are going to be sufficient coming out the end. What I'm going to do is take one line of rope and I'm going to twist that over the top of the other line and itself. So it's twisted over the top of the other line and itself once, twice, and then I'm going to pass back through so that that line of rope is poking in the direction that it was originally, out to what is my left. Okay, I've then got half of that knot done. This is then the other line of rope that I had not passed originally, and what I need to do is to do exactly the same thing but twirl this rope the opposite way. This is where it always gets funny because I never remember the first time that I've done it. I think my last line of rope wrapped away from me. So this time I'm going to wrap around itself and the other line towards me once, twice, and back through the hole that's been created. Okay, it's not too much of an issue if you don't remember which way it's actually gone, like I often forget, because that's part of the process of checking this knot. Okay, so step one is what I actually do is grab my two lines of rope, not the short tail ends, the other ends. I'm just going to pull them in an opposing direction just to make sure that it has been tied together, because effectively what happens is these two knots that you've created work against each other to stop the rope actually passing back through. I also just give the tails a little bit of a pull to make sure that it's all nice and tight and neat. And straight away I can see that I've tied this knot correctly and passed the ropes in opposing directions, away from me for one of them and back towards me for the other. The way that I can see that is that on this side of the knot I have 1, 2, 3, 4 strands of rope that all look like they're a little bit italicized, they're on a little bit of a lean. When I twist that knot over 180 degrees, I can see that I've got 2 X's. Those X's are italicized as well, but in the same direction. I'll just pull them apart for you a little bit so it's a little bit easier to see. There's one X on a bit of a lean, and there's my other X on a bit of a lean in the same direction. As I pull them back together, they sit really neatly against each other. Okay? Just tie that double fisherman's one more time with 2 coloured ropes so that you can see that working really nicely together. So I'm taking those ropes and passing them in opposing directions. I'm then going to wrap the green line, I'm going to wrap away from me, let's see if I can remember that, twice around the black line and itself. Once I've got twice, I'm going to go back through that hole that's been created in the direction that that was originally pointing. Okay, so that green line was pointing off to the left. I'm then going to take that black line, we went away over the top with the green line, so I'm going to come back towards myself with this black line, passing around the green rope and itself once and twice. Then I've created that hole back through the middle, and I'm going to pass that line of rope through. Okay, pull my 2 strands together nice and neatly, and that's really funny because this time apparently I had remembered which way I had passed it, but we can see that it's not being passed in the right direction because I've got 2 single strands and a cross on the same side, and then 2 single strands and a cross on the other side. Not to worry, I'll just pull that apart slightly, feed that black rope back out, and then just continue wrapping. I must have just passed it the opposite way to what I thought I was. 2 wraps around, and back through the hole in the center. This time as I pull it together, we can see that it's been tied correctly, and just sitting like that, the knot sits much more flush, means it's not going to move around and less likely to catch on things if we're using it in an abseil setting. So I've got my 2 X's on one side, both slightly italicized the same way, flip the knot 180 degrees, and I've got my 4 straight lines of rope. So that can be used really nicely and really effectively if I need 2 lines of rope to double the length of rope that I have on an abseil, and I can sit my knot on one side, remembering that in this setting I would need to pull my black line of rope to bring all that rope down to me. Could be used in a top rope setting where a single line of rope wasn't long enough to actually reach back to your anchor and you need to tie another rope back together, or like I'll show you in a second as well, in tying your prusik. So these double fishermans are really useful in tying your prusik together. I've actually just spent about 7 or 8 minutes trying to undo this one, but often we get our prusik already pre-tied. We might not be happy with the length of it or the length of the tails, or we might be needing to tie a new one for some reason. So important that that double fisherman is in our repertoire for tying ropes together, whether that be to create a loop or to actually just tie 2 different ropes together. But same principle here. We're just running the 2 strands of rope in opposite directions, and then I'll run my first one around the other line as well as itself, once, twice, and back through the hole that I've then created. And then going in the opposite direction with my other line of rope, once, twice, around itself as well as the other strand, and back through that hole that's been created. Tightening it off, pulling together, and doing our checks. 1, 2, 3, 4 strands, flipping 180 degrees, and I've got my 2 crosses that are both slightly italicized the same way. So I've got my prusik tied and ready to go to then use as a safety or whatever else I need to use it for.